Conservative MPs have spent the day taking stock after Boris Johnson lost the backing of 2/5 of his MPs in yesterday's no-confidence vote. There was no sign of insurrection in the cabinet, who put on a table-thumping show of support at their meeting this morning. The Prime Minister told them that it was now time to draw a line under the issues that his opponents want to talk about, and he asked them to come up with plans for reform and cost-cutting in their departments. Our political editor, Gary Gibbon, is with me. Gary.
Well, beyond the sort of pat lines that both sides are delivering to the microphones the day after the vote the night before, there is real scratching of heads going on both sides. In Number 10, they're wondering, and there was talk about this, if they'd managed to keep the rebel votes lower last night, going hard, going tough, both in terms of personnel, maybe bringing in a few more sort of hardcore believers, true friends of the Prime Minister, maybe discarding some other people. They're already seem to be sniffing out people who they think in government may not have shown sufficient loyalty yesterday in public and therefore may have voted the wrong way in the secrecy of the polling booth. So there's that. But they don't feel necessarily, some people around the Prime Minister, that they have the capacity to do this now because the vote was so tight. So should they go softer? But how do you reach out to bring in people from the other side of the party when they've just voted no confidence in the Prime Minister? So scratching of heads there, scratching of heads as well on the other side amongst the rebels. They're wondering, what should they do next? Should they wait, hope for a drip of resignations from the government over time, which severely wounded Theresa May when she was in this sort of position? Should they go back to the whole approach of going for letters, bidding for another vote of no confidence and maybe trying to change the rules so they don't have to wait a whole year, as the rules require them to at the moment, and putting all their focus on that? But they're not quite sure how to play that at the moment. I saw long faces on both sides today, agonised as they faced the day after the big vote.
Good morning, everybody.
Hold on, 1 second.
Are we good?
No, hold on.
Are we good?
Cameras were brought into Cabinet this morning after the vote of no confidence to hear Boris Johnson thank ministers for their help in keeping him in his job.
KPM.
Good morning, Cabinet. Thank you all very much, and very good to see you all. And I think thank you, by the way, everybody, for all your good work yesterday. Because
some backbenchers who voted to remove Boris Johnson had hoped a few of these ministers would now finish the job and tell him to quit.
There's a lot of soul-searching by right across the parliamentary party, including ministers, about this. And it is perhaps for the Cabinet now to think about this.
Thank you all for your support. Thank you for everything you've been doing. And let's get to it. Thank you all.
I'm not sure the banging the table. I mean, I think we should reflect this wasn't a great result from the Prime Minister. It was higher than probably many of us thought. And I think probably the right response is to go away, reflect and think, what do I need to change to turn this situation around? And, you know, trying to treat it as a glorious triumph, I think, is a mistake. I don't think anybody's buying it, really. It just looks silly, in my view.
It was a good victory for the Prime Minister. He won comfortably.
Some critics of Boris Johnson worry where policy could now go as Downing Street ponders the best way to keep him in office. Do you worry that the Prime Minister might feel a bit like a cornered beast after last night's vote and might maybe lash out a bit at people who he thinks were disloyal, might even go a bit more hard line on policy, maybe on Brexit or something like that?
I wouldn't advise him to try and find some enemies and pick a fight and look like, you know, he's leading the country and, you know, through a manufactured crisis. I think that would be a mistake. He needs to find
the very fact you bring it up suggests it's crossed your mind.
I mean, he needs to find a solution to the Northern Ireland Protocol, but the only way we're going to find a way through that is to have an agreed position with the EU.
Of the 359 Tory MPs who voted last night, some 160 are in jobs appointed by Boris Johnson, the so-called payroll vote. They could be ministers, aides, envoys, party officials, and they're supposed to be strictly loyal to the Prime Minister. That leaves around 200 Tory MPs who are backbenchers, freer to vote as they wish. But last night, 148 Tory MPs voted no confidence in Boris Johnson, which means either 3/4 of his backbenchers voted against his leadership, or a smaller proportion of them and a chunk of his government. there's 148 MPs who vote against Boris Johnson. Do you think that is 3/4 of backbenchers, the people who are technically free to vote against him, which is a stunning figure of truth, 3/4?
Yeah.
Or is it a smaller proportion of backbenchers and a load of ministers who have just got their fingers crossed behind their back and are keeping the jobs but want him out?
Who knows what goes through people's minds?
Which would be worse?
I mean, it's a reasonable question. There are people on the backbenches who are disgruntled.
It sounds like there's some ministers as well.
Well, maybe there is. There's always going to be people unhappy with the leader or the prime minister,
Is that
whatever
stable?
party.
Is that sustainable?
It's the gaffer's job. It's the boss's job to stabilise a party, and he's got a challenge on his hands. I don't deny that.
For Boris Johnson, warm words today from Ukraine's president. He was asked for his reaction to the news that Boris Johnson wasn't voted out of his job last night.
Але я дуже радий. Борис відверто нас підтримує. Борис конкретний лідер, який підтримує Україну. Я не знаю, від кого це залежало вчора, від конкретних людей, але я дуже вдячний, що ми вчора не втратили такого союзника. Ну, і ось і все. Гарна новина, що я можу сказати.
The band of the Royal Marines in Parliament today to mark the 40th anniversary of the Falklands War. The day after the critical vote, Boris Johnson's supporters are wondering how best to shore up their man. Those who rebelled against the Prime Minister pondering whether and how they should strike again.
Gary Gibbon reporting, but I'm now joined by the Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, here in Westminster. Thanks very much for coming on the programme. It's been a while.
It's a while, yes.
Indeed. So let's just start with some numbers here. He won the vote last night, but 148 backbenchers are still against him. Many of them still want him gone, presumably. 55% of the Conservative home panel of Tory members want him gone. 6 out of 10 Britons, according to YouGov, want him gone. You're still loyal to him.
Absolutely.
Are you okay with joining his suicide mission?
It's not a suicide mission, Matt. He won the vote decisively. It's a democratic process. And what we're doing now, we had a cabinet meeting this morning, is we're getting behind the Prime Minister to deliver on what people are concerned about, which is the cost of living. We need to reduce burdens on people, we need to reduce taxes, and we need to grow the economy. That's what I'm focused on, and that's what the entire cabinet and I think the parliamentary party is focusing on at the moment.
But what about the focus of history? John Major won a no confidence vote and then lost in a landslide election to Tony Blair. You could suffer the same fate, couldn't you?
I don't think that will happen. And as far as this particular Prime Minister is concerned, he's been written off dozens of times. He's somebody who's extremely resilient and he's extremely focused on delivering what matters to people. And I'm really looking forward, actually, to driving that programme, driving those priorities.
But whatever he wants to deliver, are people actually going to believe him? Are they going to believe your party, which is fundamentally divided about who should run it?
I think that the people will look at where we've come from. They will look at the fact that we got Brexit done, we got a deal, which people said was impossible. They will look at the fact that we got the vaccine rollout more quickly than any other economy, and also, Matt, the fact that in Ukraine today, the country that they talk about in terms of giving them the most support is the UK. And that's something which I think the Prime Minister's been largely responsible for.
But let's not talk about Ukraine, let's talk about this country.
Yeah.
We have a windfall tax in place, although it's called by another name, but it is a windfall tax. You are quoted as saying today that you're against the windfall tax.
No, I didn't say I was against I was misquoted. I said I was against windfall taxes in principle.
Yeah, but we have one now in practice.
And in practice, I said we've got a huge, unprecedented time. We've had people who are, before you interrupt me, people who are really, really suffering from the cost of living. And I think it's absolutely appropriate to have a profits levy. And it's not just a windfall tax, because it actually incentivizes investment. So I think the Chancellor got the balance right, and we're actually using those profits to help people in need.
You said on the 15th of May, a windfall tax is a bad idea, that the Tory party should oppose. I mean,
I've been opposed to it. I mean, I haven't changed my mind. I mean,
you have changed your mind.
No, so in terms of principle, I know it's difficult to sometimes.
But it's okay to say you've changed your mind. Just admit it.
I said in principle, I'm against them, but in practice today, given that people are facing unprecedented cost of living, gas prices have gone up. Wholesale gas prices have gone up 10 times from 2 years ago. I think it is appropriate to have a tax that we have to help people with.
When your party ran against Jeremy Corbyn, and actually, Keir Starmer, the thing you always hear from Tories is they have no idea what they actually stand for. What does the Tory party stand for these days?
I think
because I'm not sure, frankly, whether it's a high tax party or a low tax party. Is it a spend party or a save party? Which one is it?
So, coming out of COVID, we had spent hundreds of billions of pounds, and that had to be paid for. And that's why we've raised taxes. Now, going into the rest of the Parliament, we want to reduce taxes, as the Prime Minister said, and we want to grow the economy, and that's what I'm focused on.
And are you comfortable with the fact that the taxes are now higher than they've been since the 1950s, at the highest?
I think
this is a Tory party that's presided over this.
I totally hear what you're saying, but we actually had to spend a huge amount of money. Now, the alternative to raising tax revenue is simply borrowing the money, and that was something which, rightly in my view, the Chancellor was reluctant to do. And we have to raise taxes in order to fund things like the social care levy, in order to help people get through potentially difficult winter in terms of energy bills. And that's a reasonable thing to do.
There's been a slight reduction in the tax on fuel, but that's not reflected in the actual prices on the pumps, is it? Because they just keep going up the whole time. So the little that you are doing, it's not actually cutting through with the voters.
So that's one of the things we've really had to look at very closely, is that many of the people who are getting they weren't passing through the fuel cut on the petrol forecourts, and I've written letters to people to make sure that reduction is transmitted to customers.
But the bigger issue that Tory MPs, backbenchers are telling us they confront on the doorstep, that association members are telling us troubles them, is that they no longer know what the soul of the Tory party looks like. It is a party that is confused.
I don't think we're confused at all. As I've said, we delivered on Brexit, we've delivered on the vaccine rollout, we've delivered critical support.
Brexit is a work in progress, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, but it's much further. I mean, you and I were debating
this. The deal
was
done, but I mean, we're seeing the repercussions.
I mean, we can laugh at the deal, but the deal was significant, and it took us many, many years and many, many attempts here in the House of Commons to get that through, and it was a significant achievement. So there is a record of delivery. That's what we're focused on. And as Business Secretary, I'm focused on growing a business and supporting it, as the Chancellor has done, through a difficult time.
Let's get back to an election, maybe in a year from now. If your party loses the two by-elections that are coming up right now in 2 weeks' time, that would be a huge deal for your party, wouldn't it? Have you not got Boris Johnson around your neck like an albatross then, that you can't get rid of because he's there for another year?
I mean, Boris Johnson,
soldiering towards defeat.
Not at all. Boris Johnson was elected in 2019. I think it was 2-1 with the members. He won a decisive vote amongst MPs. Yesterday, there was a no confidence vote. He won that decisively. And I'm looking forward to helping him and working with him to deliver on the government's programme and to win the election in 2024, if it happens then.
And the fact that you can say today to me about the windfall tax, actually, I'm against it, even though it's now policy, does that mean that the discipline inside the party is gone? Because he can't afford to sack you, frankly.
So as I've always said, and I'm going to repeat it, windfall taxes I was against in principle, in general. I think generally they're a bad idea. But as what's happened today is that we have an unprecedented situation. You've got to be flexible in dealing with that. And I think the approach the Chancellor adopted, and it wasn't just a pure windfall levy, there was an actual incentive to invest. That was critically important. That's something that I'm happy to support.
But the fact that you can go freelance on this crucial issue, dealing with our economic crisis right now, I wonder if that is symptomatic of the lack of discipline in a party that is not just fundamentally divided, but where the Prime Minister can't afford to sack anyone or discipline them because he needs all of you on board.
I totally disagree with the premise of what you're saying. There is plenty of discipline, and that's why I'm here defending the Prime Minister. You haven't seen mass resignations. The media have got very, very excited, but actually we're seeing a very calm day today, as you've seen, and people are uniting behind the Prime Minister and making sure that he can deliver his programme so that we can get re-elected.
But the discipline hasn't trickled down from the cabinet to the backbenchers. They're up in arms about this.
Well, your question was that I was an example of a cabinet minister without discipline, and I said, no, we've got discipline. I think there are different strands of opinion. You saw that yesterday, and our job now is to work in progress to unite the party so that we can deliver a general election victory.
Finally, we read William Hague, former party leader, again coming up with eviscerating criticism today against Boris Johnson. We heard the same again from John Major, of course. When you've got so many former party leaders up against you right now, does that not give you cause for concern?
Well, look, we always respect what party leaders and what party members say. There was a whole issue of this years ago with the Brexit debate. There was an endless blue on blue action. I'm not interested in Conservatives former or present Conservatives
the voters
attacking
might be.
each other. And they are, and they don't like divided parties, and that's why I'm trying as a cabinet minister and as someone supporting the Prime Minister to bring the party together so that we can focus on a crucial mission of delivery.
So the Prime Minister, this one will lead you into the next election.
I'm pretty confident he will, but lots of things happen in politics. I'm 100% behind him, and I think
That
he'll
sounds
win
like an out.
2024. It's all an out. I mean, you've been covering politics for decades, and you've seen it's very rash to make predictions. As far as what I can see now, I think the Prime Minister is absolutely not only the right person, but I think he will be the person to lead us into the election.
We shall speak again, hopefully. Kwasi Kwarteng,
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for now from Westminster. Let's go to Cathy in Leeds. Cathy.
Thanks, Matt. Well, Boris Johnson's rebuilding job is even more challenging in Scotland, where his support is in free fall among his own MPs. Only 2 of the Conservatives' 6 MPs in Scotland back the Prime Minister, and today the Scottish Tory leader, Douglas Ross, is sticking with his call for Boris Johnson to go. Our Scotland correspondent, Kieran Jenkins, reports.
If it's been a rough 24 hours for Boris Johnson, welcome to Scotland, where 4 out of 6 of his own MPs wanted him gone. The MP here in Moffat in the south of Scotland among them, as the Tories' dirty laundry went on very public display. Unforgivable, say Hazel and Claire. Here in their dirty laundry in public. Is that what the Tories are doing?
Yeah, I think so, don't you?
I don't know. What do you think?
Yes, I think it should have been sorted a long time ago. It's just went on far too long. He should have walked when he was asked to.
I think he should have walked. End of story. Get him out now.
The only 2 MPs in Scotland who backed the Prime Minister are on the government payroll, including the Secretary of State for Scotland, who was feeling good before yesterday's vote.
Very positive in support of the Prime Minister.
Today in Dumfries, at the heart of his own constituency, as some of the Prime Minister's allies point fingers at the press, Builder James is not convinced. Do you care about that issue?
Yeah, you know, I've lost people through the pandemic, and I stuck to the rules, like everyone, and the fact that he didn't is wrong. He shouldn't be in power.
It's a long way from the Ruth Davidson days, the former Scottish Tory leader who reached beyond the party's traditional base. Current leader Douglas Ross did equal her best result in Holyrood elections last year, but that was before Partygate, before Mr Ross called for the Prime Minister to go, changed his mind because of Ukraine, then last night changed it back again.
I had to look at what constituents were telling me in Murray, what people across Scotland were saying to me, and I came to the conclusion that I couldn't continue to support the Prime Minister, and I had to vote that I didn't have confidence in him.
Of course, Boris Johnson has never been Scotland's favourite politician. Jeered on an early visit to Edinburgh as PM. But like Moffat's famously tough toffee, for a growing number of Scots he's becoming increasingly difficult to swallow. After the 2019 general election, a poll found 58% said they were dissatisfied with him. That's now 83%.
I'm standing on a tail. Come on, Rosie Posey.
Question for Operation Save Big Dog, as Mr Johnson's team have been known. Can they persuade more people to think like Linna and move on?
Who's better at it than he is, you know. Everybody's as bad as each other as far as I'm concerned, or as good as each other.
The problem for Boris Johnson is that the result in Scotland really was decisive. It was decisively bad. And there are Tories here now wondering how on earth this can be salvaged. What are they going to do about an election within the next 2 years when 2/3 of the party's own MPs in Scotland don't have confidence in the Prime Minister?
There is a point down the road in the not too distant future where you have to say, look, if Boris Johnson's still Prime Minister, what exactly are you going to do? Because clearly you can't ask people to vote for somebody who you don't think should be Prime Minister.
In some Scottish Tory circles, there's hopeful talk of allies having whiskies and quiet chats with the Prime Minister, urging him to go. So which whisky would you recommend for that occasion?
That's a bit harsh on the whiskies, to be fair. So I'm not entirely sure. Maybe an American one?
Karen sums up Boris Johnson's challenge. The MP here is the Scottish Secretary, isn't he? He seems to think that people are backing Boris Johnson.
Yeah, but Boris Johnson thinks that people are backing Boris Johnson, so I'm not entirely sure how that works.
For now, it's impasse for the Tories in Scotland, a rupture in the party which shows no sign of being resolved.